State of the City address yesterday, Mayor Eric Adams outlined where he thinks we are and where he'd like to go in 2023.
The city's public advocate has his own views, and Jumaane Williams joins us now to tell us about those. So welcome. Thanks so much, public advocate, for being with us.
Thank you both. Always a pleasure.
All right, so what's your overall critique of the mayor's speech?
I got to say, it was a pretty good speech. We want to hear some details of the pretty lofty goals that we hear there. But as we heard, the basic outline sounded like a city that we all want to live in, based on the goals and a government that has a job to do to get us there.
Yeah, and so do you think that anything, I guess, was left out, anything of importance that was left out of the speech, or there was not enough detail surrounding?
There's always things that you can mention. Rikers was one of the things that I think could have been mentioned that was left out. The speech was already, over an hour. I think there are some details in particular that we want to hear, especially when it comes around things like affordable housing. When we talk about housing, but we're a little light on where we're talking about the affordability and the income bands, and kind of that same critique both on the city and the state level. We've asked for these type of units to be built, but we want to make sure we're focusing on the affordable units and the low income bands. So we just got to hear the details to see what exactly we're going to get done.
Now, you mentioned Rikers. How do you feel the city should be handling it then?
Well, obviously, Rikers is a moral blight, and it has been for a very long time. Understandably, it's a tough job for anyone to come into, but I don't think we're doing well right now. And we want to make sure that we're following the law in terms of the closure of Rikers. And I think there's some concern of whether we're going to hit those metrics that were set.
Yeah, and speaking of Rikers, that kind of goes hand in hand with public safety overall, right? And that was a big part of the mayor's speech. We talked to the mayor just about an hour ago about an announcement coming in terms of what's happening in the subway system later on, how he says it's going to be a really safe place. Where do you see the public safety in terms of how well he has been doing? Are you for or against any of the measures being taken?
We've been quite clear some of the spaces where we disagree, and we continue to disagree. What I want to lift up is the discussion that we're talking about public safety not just being on the backs of law enforcement. That's where we come into trouble. There was some mention about recidivism, which I think everyone cares about. There's an area that I think everyone could agree on, and that's speedy trial. If we can focus on getting folks adjudicated, some of the other things won't be pushed, particularly the ones that are most harmful. So public safety and housing are actually two areas I've worked on for many, many years, and I would look forward to partnering with the mayor, but my job isn't to be for or against, it's to make sure that the job that's being done is what's best for the people of the city.
Well, let's talk about affordable housing. And the mayor talking about this plan to add 500,000 new homes in the city, including possibly in Midtown, changing that there. What do you think about that? Have you spoken about that issue?
Well, I had a reason to be traveling the state recently, and we called for 1 million units across the state, the majority of which were in New York City. We have the governor ask for 800,000 units, and the mayor saying 500,000. So it tracks. The one thing I want to say is that if we're going to make it easier for people to build, which we probably should, if we want to have the lofty goals like we're speaking about, the thing is we have to do it for income targeted, low income and affordable housing. There's no point in making it easy to build. There's no point in changing zoning if we're going to focus on market rate. And secondly, there is no housing plan that is real with those kind of numbers unless we're focused on preservation and preserving the units we have. So at least 60% should be focused on preservation.
Yeah, why would you travel in the state? I'm just kidding. So let's talk about the migrant surge overall and where you think the mayor has been on handling that right now, right? Because we see this new shelters popping up in Brooklyn now. What's your overall view on how it's being handled?
So, we all have to say that what's happening now is unsustainable. It's dangerous, and the city can't do it by themselves. And that's why we join in asking and pleading with the federal government to provide more resources. The governor and the state have been really silent on this, and we have to get resources from them. And we're asking the governor to encourage other municipalities to open up as well to help out. At the same time, we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that is still welcoming, that we don't want to have a us versus them conversation, because that actually makes things dangerous, and we've seen that historically. And we want to make sure that we're not trying to change laws. Everyone has a right to shelter in New York, and that's the way that it has to be, both morally and legally. It's one thing to say we're having difficulties hitting that goal. It's another thing to say the goal shouldn't exist to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, the mayor has made it pretty clear that if we don't get federal funding to help with the migrant crisis here, that there's going to be cuts to this city. And no one's really answered where those cuts might be. What is your take on that?
Well, I want to be clear. The mayor has suggested there'll be cuts whether or not there are asylum seekers here. And so we can't put that on the asylum seekers. I want to be clear. The shelters have been full long before that. What is happening, it is making the crisis even more acute. Had we solved it to begin with, we wouldn't be having this problem. So we want to be clear and be careful of how we're gauging and discussing the asylum seekers. We have to be wary of austerity cuts in these times because they often make things worse. It is hard to say we're going to have lofty goals and then say we have to make cuts. We're not going to raise revenue. So those things don't square. The last thing I want to make sure I do is bring up the issues of Black immigration, immigrants coming from Africa and the Caribbean. Often that gets left out.
Okay, Public Advocate, we're almost out of time here, and I want to get you on an off-topic question because we are expecting to see the video out of Memphis, expected to be released later today. And the mayor, his spokesperson told us that he spoke to Reverend Sharpton last night, is coordinating with the NYPD and asking people to peacefully protest in anticipation of that video being released this afternoon. Will you be part of any protests out there? I know you've been out there in the past when it comes to these kinds of videos. What are you expecting later today?
You know, I haven't watched the George Floyd video. I haven't watched the Ahmaud Arbery. I plan not to watch the Tyree Nichols video. It is very traumatic, but I will do whatever I can to continue to push for accountability and continue to push for change. If people want their voices to be heard, I'm going to join them and make sure that it's done in the best way. I would always, I try to be careful. I don't know if peaceful is the word, but we definitely want nonviolent protests and nonviolent voices. But more importantly, we want accountability and we want justice. And we want these videos to stop coming out.
All right, New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, thanks again for being here this morning. We always appreciate your time.